Matt Walker explains how sleep can be an emotional refresher.
Another function that we've been missing in this whole field of sleep research, which is that sleep is not just good for memory, it's also good to stabilize our emotions. And in this study, to try and get at that, we kind of did a similar type of design to that which we showed you in the previous memory study, where we had two groups of subjects. One gets sleep, one gets deprived of sleep. Both get stuck inside of a brain scanner on the second day. But now inside the scanner, we actually do an emotional challenge task with them. And the challenge task is this. They actually see a series of 100 standardized psychological picture slides, which range in a gradient from being rather neutral and bland to increasingly negative and unpleasant. And I'll just show you sort of some examples of this gradient that we start to build up. I'm not showing you the more severe ones. They are really pretty unpleasant. There's mutilation. There'd be reactive vomiting in the front row. We wouldn't want that. But you get a sense of the sort of the experimental gradient of emotionality that we build up here. Now, they don't see it in that nice linear gradient. All of the pictures are jumbled up. But for our analysis, we can backsort all of those trials according to that emotional gradient and ask a very simple question. What in the brain is showing increasing reactivity to increasing picture negativity, increasing picture unpleasantness? And when you look in the control group, what you see lighting up in response to those increasingly unpleasant images is this structure here. It's a structure called the amygdala. And again, you have one on your left side of your brain and your right side. The brain is bilateral. It's like a mirror. Both hemispheres have identical structures. And so what I'm circling for you here is that structure, the amygdala, and I'm just showing you two different views of that same region. On your left, you can see a shot of the brain through from the front, and on the right is a view looking down from on top of it, as if we've sliced the head off and you're looking down in. But it's the same region. And that modest level of sort of red-hot activity is showing you that there was some activity in that part of the brain in response to those pictures. How much? Well, we can quantify it empirically, sort of by essentially sticking a thermometer in there, as it were, and getting how strong the signal was from those regions, and that's what you see in this bar graph, the amount of activity coming from the left amygdala and the right amygdala, the right and left emotional centers of the brain. Now, when you look in the sleep-deprived group, rather than seeing impaired brain activity, which has been the common story in things like learning and memory, when it comes to emotion, you see exactly the opposite. In fact, what you see is about a 60% increase in the reactivity of your Neanderthal brain when you're sleep-deprived to negative, unpleasant things. And you can sort of, I'm just focusing up here just so you get a real sense of the difference. You don't have to have done a statistics course to tell that there's clearly something significant going on between those two groups. But for us, the more interesting question was why? Why is the emotional brain so overreactive when you're sleep-deprived? And to get at that, we had to use some more sophisticated brain imaging analyses, something that we call functional connectivity. Again, it's a really fancy name for something very basic, which is that you just extract the activity coming from that emotional center, the amygdala, across the scanning session, and then you feed back that activity into your analysis, and you ask, which of the regions within the brain seem to be corresponding or singing in time with the emotional brain, as if they're connected in a network. So you get these sort of amygdala connection maps in the sleep group and amygdala connection maps in the deprivation group, and you see what's going on. And what you find is that in the group that had had a good night of sleep, this region in green, the frontal lobe, and particularly the middle part called the medial prefrontal cortex, was strongly connected to the amygdala. Why is that important? Well, it turns out that that structure is known to send top-down, what we call top-down, inhibitory control onto your reptilian brain. Essentially, it's the CEO that keeps your Neanderthal urge in check, okay? What we found, however, in the sleep deprivation group, unfortunately, was that that connection pathway had been severed. And as a consequence, you lost that top-down rational control of your emotional brain. So it's almost as though when you're sleep deprived, you're all gas pedal and no brake, as it were, which is really a situation that you don't necessarily want to be in a lot of the time. There's a very few number of circumstances, fear, fight, flight responses, when you don't want to be thinking about it, you just want to be reacting. For the most part, you do want to be thinking about it. Unfortunately, you're not connected when you're sleep deprived, as it were. So I think really now, and I'm happy to talk about this in questions too, we're finding more and more evidence that there is a very intimate association between sleep and emotional brain health, as it were. And we're starting to find that it may actually be REM sleep that is doing this sort of recalibration of the emotional networks. It's almost as though sleep is resetting the magnetic north of your emotional compass, and in a good way.